When Lady Clara accepts a prince's mocking challenge to tame a wild stallion, she tumbles from society's grace into the mud of public humiliation. But what begins as her greatest disgrace becomes the path to true freedom, as the prince discovers too late that the woman he scorned has found something far more precious than his crown. But will Clara's newfound strength be enough when the past comes to reclaim her? Clara stood in the middle of the big room. Her white dress shone in the light from many candles. She was 23 years old. Everyone in town thought she was the best young lady around. She could play the piano. She could speak 3 kinds of words. She was going to marry Prince Fred from a faraway land. This marriage would make her family very important. The room was warm and smelled like flowers and fancy food. People in fine clothes moved around her like ants at a picnic. The sound of string music floated in the air. Clara could feel the smooth silk of her dress against her skin, and the tight pull of her hair tied up with pins that made her head hurt a bit. "Every girl in the land wishes they were you," her mother said in her ear. Mother fixed the white beads around Clara's neck. The prince picked the right girl. Clara smiled the way she was taught, but deep down she felt funny, like something wasn't right. She watched the other girls dance. They laughed for real. Their eyes lit up. Her smiles never came from her heart anymore. The big clock in the corner said 8. In 2 hours, the prince would ask her to dance. He always did this at the same time. Clara knew just how to hold her hands, how to step, how to look at him, but not too much. Her teacher had shown her 100 times until it was perfect. "Miss Clara," called Mrs. Benson, her old nurse, "your gloves need fixing." Clara walked to the side of the room. As Mrs. Benson fixed her gloves, Clara watched a bird outside the window. It flew away free while she stood still. The prince walked in the door. He wore a red coat with shiny buttons and badges. 5 men followed him like shadows. When he smiled, his eyes stayed cold like ice. Clara had seen that same look when he watched his horses race. He looked at things he owned. "There she is," said Lord Taft, her father's friend. "The perfect bride, not a hair out of place." "Yes," said another man. "Good family, good manners, good face. What more could a prince want?" Clara felt her face grow hot. They talked about her like she was a horse for sale at market. Prince Fred walked to her. His boots made sharp sounds on the floor. He smelled like strong soap and something else that reminded Clara of her father's study. Old books and power. "My dear girl," he said, taking her hand in his. His gloves felt stiff and new. "You look just right tonight. Your dress cost a lot, I can tell." "Thank you, Your Highness," Clara said. Her voice came out just as she practiced, soft but clear, like the ring of a small bell. "Tell me," he said, "did you finish reading that book I gave you?" Clara had not. The book was thick and full of words about war, but she knew the right answer. "Yes, Your Highness. It was very good. Excellent. A princess must be smart enough to understand such things, but not so smart she talks too much about them." He laughed. Other men laughed too. Clara's mother beamed from across the room. Her father nodded with pride. This was all they wanted, their daughter on the arm of a prince. Clara should feel happy. This was what she had worked for all her life. The prince led her to the dance floor. 1, 2, 3 steps. Turn, smile. 1, 2, 3. She moved like a toy that someone wound up. Perfect, but not alive. "Next month we will be married," the prince said. "My mother has planned everything. You need not worry about a thing." "That is kind," Clara said. "Your English home is nice, but my castle has 100 rooms. You will have 20 women to help you dress. You will wear a new dress each day." Clara tried to feel excited. "That sounds wonderful." As they danced, Clara saw her friend Lucy by the door. Lucy had married a doctor last year. They lived in a small house. But when the doctor came to get Lucy, they touched hands like they meant it. They smiled real smiles. The prince's hand was firm on her back, but it felt like a wall between them, not a bridge. "You will give me strong sons," the prince said. It wasn't a wish. It was an order. Clara nodded. The music seemed too loud now. The room too hot. The dress too tight. "Is something wrong?" the prince asked, his voice sharp. "No, Your Highness. Everything is perfect." And it was perfect. The way her teachers and parents and the prince wanted. Perfect and cold and planned out like a map with no surprises. As the dance ended, the prince bowed. "Until tomorrow, my future princess." Clara dropped into a deep curtsy. Just the right depth for a prince. Not too low to seem weak, not too high to seem proud, just right. Always just right. Yes, Your Highness, until tomorrow. But as she walked back to her mother's side, a tiny voice inside her heart whispered, "Is this all there is?" She pushed the thought away. Such ideas were not proper for the future princess of a faraway land. Not proper at all. The morning of the big hunt broke with clear skies. The air felt cool and fresh as Clara got dressed. Her riding outfit was dark blue with shiny buttons. Her maid pinned her hair tight under her hat. Not one strand could escape. A proper lady never looked messy, even on a hunt. "The prince will watch you ride today," Mother said, fixing Clara's collar. "Sit straight. Don't go too fast. Be ladylike." Clara nodded. She had been riding since she was 5, but never the way she wanted. Always side saddle, always slow and careful. Her cream-coloured mare, Lily, was gentle and well-trained. Perfect for a lady. Outside, 50 horses and riders waited. Men in red coats, women in fine riding dresses, dogs running around, making noise. The smell of horses and leather filled the air. Clara's stomach felt tight. In 3 days, she would marry the prince. Then she would leave England forever. "There she is," the prince called as Clara walked up. "My English rose." He sat tall on his big black horse. 6 men stood near him, all smiling and bowing to Clara. The prince's horse stomped and tossed its head. It did not like standing still. "Good morning, Your Highness," Clara said with a small bow of her head. "You must call me Fred now," he said. "We are to be married." "Yes, Fred." The name felt strange in her mouth. The horns blew. The hunt was starting. Horses moved in a big group into the green fields. The prince rode at the front. Clara stayed in the middle with the other ladies. Men shouted. Dogs barked. The noise was like a storm around her. They rode for an hour through fields and woods. Clara's back hurt from sitting so straight. The side saddle made her legs ache, but she kept her face calm. A princess never shows pain. The group stopped at the edge of a field. Men were shouting and pointing. Clara moved Lily closer to see. In a rope pen stood the biggest horse she'd ever seen. Black as night, with wild eyes. It jumped and kicked at the air. 4 men held ropes trying to keep it still. Its coat shone with sweat, and steam came from its nose in the cool air. "What a beast," said Lord Taft. "Where did you find it?" "My men caught it on the moors," the prince said. "It has never been ridden. They say no man can tame it." The horse reared up on its back legs. It was taller than any man there. Its front hooves cut through the air like knives. "Be careful," someone called. "It killed a dog yesterday." The prince laughed. His eyes lit up as he watched the wild horse. For once he looked alive. "I like things with spirit," he said. "They are more fun to break." Clara felt her hands tighten on her reins. She did not like that word. Break. The horse crashed against the ropes. One snapped with a sound like a whip. Men jumped back. "Someone should try to ride it," said Lord Taft. The prince looked around at the men. They all stepped back. No one wanted to try. The horse's eyes rolled white with fear and anger. Then the prince turned to Clara. His smile was not nice. "What about you, my dear?" he said loud enough for all to hear. "If you tame this horse, I'll marry you." People laughed. The prince laughed loudest. This was a joke. Everyone knew a lady would never do such a thing. Clara looked at the wild horse. It was scared, trapped, fighting for its freedom. Something inside her chest hurt as she watched it. "It's not proper for a lady," her mother said quickly. "Of course not," the prince agreed. "No true lady would try such a thing. It was just a small joke." Clara watched the men with whips move toward the horse. They would break its spirit, make it stop fighting, turn it into something tame and proper, like her. Without thinking, Clara slid down from Lily. Her feet hit the ground with a soft thud. "Clara," her mother gasped, "let's get back on your horse at once." But Clara was already walking toward the pen. Her heart beat fast in her chest. The world went quiet around her. She could only hear the wild horses breathing. "I'll try," she said. The prince's smile dropped. "Don't be silly, girl. Get back in line." "You said if I tame this horse, you'll marry me," Clara said. The words came out clear and strong. People started to whisper. Ladies covered their mouths with their hands. Men frowned. This was not proper. This was not what a lady did. "Let her try," called someone from the back. "Let's see what happens." The prince's face turned dark like a storm cloud. "Fine," he said. "Try if you must, but don't cry when you fail." A man opened the gate to the pen. Clara walked in slowly. The ground was muddy from the horse's steps. Her clean boots sank in the dirt. The wild horse watched her with big, dark eyes. It snorted and pawed the ground. It was scared, not mean. Clara took small steps toward it. "It's okay," she said softly. "I won't hurt you." She held out her hand, palm up. Empty. Safe. For a moment the horse stood still. It looked at her. Something passed between them. The horse took one step toward her. Then a dog barked. The horse jumped in fear. Its big body crashed into Clara. She fell back into the mud with a splash. Brown muck covered her fine blue riding outfit. It splashed up on her face, in her hair. The horse ran to the other side of the pen, still wild, still free. People started to laugh. First a few, then more and more. Clara sat in the mud, her perfect outfit ruined, her perfect hair falling down. Laughter crashed around her like waves. The prince rode up to the edge of the pen. His face showed not worry, but disgust. "How disappointing," he said, looking down at her. His voice was cold as ice. "It seems I've misjudged your breeding after all. No true princess would make such a fool of herself." Clara's cheeks burned hot with shame. Tears filled her eyes, but she would not let them fall. Not here. Not in front of all these laughing people. She stood up slowly. Mud dripped from her dress. Her hat was gone. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders. "Indeed, your highness," she said, looking right at him. "It seems we have both misjudged many things." The prince's eyes grew wide with shock. No one spoke to him that way. Clara turned and walked out of the pen, past the laughing lords, past the whispering ladies, past her crying mother, her back straight, her head high, mud with every step. She was ruined. Her perfect life was over. The prince would never marry her now. She should feel broken. But with each step away from the pen, away from the prince, away from the life planned for her, Clara felt something new inside her chest. It felt like the first breath after being underwater too long. Clara watched the waves crash against the rocks. 1, 2, 3. Crash. Pull back. Crash again. The sea never stopped. It was the third day since she had come to her Aunt Jo's small house by the sea. 3 days since she had run away from her old life. The wind pushed at her hair, making it fly around her face. She did not pin it up anymore. No one was here to see if she looked proper or not. The small house sat on a cliff, with 100 stone steps down to the beach. It was just big enough for Aunt Jo, who had never married, and now for Clara too. The walls inside were not fancy like at home. They were white and plain. But they had colourful things from faraway places hanging on them. Strange masks, woven rugs, things no proper English house would have. Clara's room had a window that looked right at the sea. At night she could hear the waves while she fell asleep. The bed was smaller than her bed at home, but she slept better in it. No bad dreams about weddings and princes and falling in mud while people laughed. "Tea is ready," Aunt Jo called from the house. Clara turned from the edge of the cliff. The ground under her feet was not smooth, and even like the paths at home, it was bumpy and wild with little plants growing in cracks. She had to watch her step, but she liked that. It made her pay attention to where she was and what she was doing right now, not what would happen tomorrow. Inside, the small kitchen was warm. A fire burned in the stone fireplace. Aunt Jo poured tea into 2 blue cups. She was Mother's sister, but looked nothing like her. Mother was always perfect, with every hair in place. Aunt Jo's grey hair was in a messy bun. She wore a man shirt over her skirt. No one in town would think she was from a good family, but her eyes were kind. 3 cups of tea a day keeps the doctor away, Aunt Jo said with a smile. Clara sat at the wooden table by the window. It had marks and cuts in it from years of use. Not like the shiny tables at home that no one could touch without a cloth under their cup. "I got a letter from your mother today," Aunt Jo said, sitting down with her tea. Clara's hands got tight around her cup. "What did she say?" "That you have ruined your life, that the prince has found a new bride, that everyone in town is talking about how you fell in the mud and talked back to a prince." Clara looked down at her tea. The steam made her face feel hot. Or maybe it was shame. "I'm sorry to bring trouble to you," Aunt Jo laughed. It was a loud laugh, not like a lady's small titter. Trouble? Child, I've been waiting 20 years for someone in this family to make a real fuss. Your mother was always so worried about doing things the right way. I'm glad you found your own way. I didn't find anything, Clara said. I lost everything. My future, my place in society, the prince. Did you want the prince? Aunt Jo asked. Her head tilted like a bird's. Clara opened her mouth, then closed it. She had never asked herself if she wanted him, only if he wanted her, if she was good enough for him. I don't know, she said in a small voice. Well, said Aunt Jo, that's a start. 5 more days passed. Clara spent most of her time walking on the beach. She took off her shoes and felt the sand between her toes. The water was cold, but she let it wash over her feet anyway. She picked up shells and rocks, pretty ones, broken ones, all kinds. At home, she'd never been allowed to get dirty or wet, but here, no one cared. She came back to the house with sand on her skin and wind in her hair. It felt good. She found a spot on the cliff where she could sit and watch the sea for hours. Sometimes she cried there, not just about the prince and the mud and the laughing people, but about all the years before, all the times she had made herself small and quiet and proper, all the real parts of herself she had hidden away. Aunt Jo didn't ask why Clara's eyes were red when she came home. She just made tea and told stories about the places she had been. She had travelled all over the world as a paid friend to a rich old lady. She had seen mountains taller than clouds, cities with buildings made of gold, oceans with fish that glowed in the dark. Why did you come back here? Clara asked one night by the fire. After seeing all those amazing places? Aunt Jo smiled. Her face had more lines than Mother's, but they were from smiling and being in the sun, not from worry. Because this is where I can be myself, she said. In those fancy places I had to be what other people wanted. Here, I'm just Jo. Clara thought about that for a long time. On the 10th day, a big box came. It was from Mother. Inside were Clara's things from home, her dresses, her books, her hairbrush and mirror, all packed up nice and neat. Like she was never coming back. Clara held her favourite blue dress. It felt strange in her hands now, stiff and formal, not like the simple clothes she had been wearing at Aunt Jo's. There's a note, Aunt Jo said, holding out a small white paper. The note said, The prince marries next month. Please do not come home before then. People are still talking. Clara felt like she had been slapped. Mother didn't want her to come home. She was a mark on the family name now, a stain, like the mud on her riding dress. She dropped the note in the fire and watched it burn. That night she couldn't sleep. The waves seemed louder than before, angry, like they were shouting at her. Or maybe the shouting was inside her own head. She got out of bed and went to the window. The moon made a silver path on the water. It looked like a road leading far away. To another life, maybe. Who am I now? She whispered to the empty room. If I'm not the perfect girl who was going to marry a prince, who am I? No one answered, not even the sea. The next morning she found Aunt Jo's bookshelf. It wasn't like Father's library with all its leather books about war and hunting. These books had pictures of plants and animals, maps of faraway places, stories about women who had adventures, not just weddings. Clara took one book and started to read, then another and another. She read all day, forgetting to eat, forgetting to be sad. The books had words she didn't know, ideas she had never thought about. They made her brain feel alive, like it was waking up from a long sleep. Aunt Jo found her asleep in the chair that night, a book on her lap. She put a blanket over Clara and smiled. 3 weeks passed. Clara read every book on Aunt Jo's shelf. She asked questions about the places Aunt Jo had been. She learned to cook eggs on the fire, to sweep the floor, to fix a hole in a sock. Simple things that maids had always done for her before. And she kept walking. Every day, rain or shine, she walked along the cliff or on the beach. Her skin got darker from the sun. Her hands got rough from climbing on rocks. Her legs got stronger from all the walking. One day, she walked farther than ever before, over the big hill and down to the next bay. There, in a grassy field by the sea, was a black horse. The same wild horse from the hunt. It was running free, its black mane flying in the wind like a flag. Clara froze. How did it get here? Who had let it go? The horse saw her and stopped running. It looked at her from across the field. They both stood still watching each other. "Hello again," Clara said softly. The horse's ears moved toward her voice. It didn't run away. It just watched her. Clara didn't move closer. She just sat down on a rock and watched the horse run and play in the field. Free, wild, being exactly what it was made to be. When the sun started to set, Clara stood up to walk home. The horse looked at her one more time, then went back to eating grass. "I'll come back tomorrow," Clara said. And for the first time in a month, she smiled a real smile that came from deep inside. Not because anyone was watching, not because it was proper, but because something in her heart felt right for once. Rain beat against the windows like tiny fists. The sky was grey as old metal. Clara sat by the fire in Aunt Jo's small front room. An open book rested on her lap. It was her 5th book this week. This one told about stars and how sailors used them to find their way home. Clara liked it very much. "More tea?" Aunt Jo asked, holding up the pot. "Yes, please." Clara held out her cup. She wore a plain brown dress now, not the fancy dresses from home. Her hands had small cuts from helping in the garden. Her face had freckles from the sun. Mother would be shocked to see her now. "You've read almost every book I own," Aunt Jo said, looking at the shelves that lined the walls. There were 200 books there. Clara had counted. "I know, I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, be proud. Most fine ladies don't read at all, they just pretend to," Clara smiled. "I never liked reading before. At home, the books were all about proper things. How to be a lady, how to run a house. Boring things. And here? Here the books are about real things. How the world works. What's out there beyond our small part of it. Things that matter." Aunt Jo nodded. She picked up her own book, about plants that heal sick people. They sat in quiet for a long time, just reading. The fire crackled. The rain fell. It was peaceful. But inside Clara's head, things were not so quiet. The books filled her mind with new thoughts. Big thoughts. Sometimes scary thoughts. They made her see that the world was much bigger than she had known, and that her old life had been very small. The next day the rain stopped. Clara went to the field by the sea. The wild horse was there again, eating grass. Its black coat shone in the sun like water. Clara sat on her rock and watched it. She had been coming here every day for 2 weeks. The horse knew her now. It didn't run away. "Hello, friend," she said. The horse lifted its head to look at her. Its eyes were brown and deep. It went back to eating. Clara opened the bag she had brought. Inside was an apple cut into 4 pieces. She set one piece on a flat rock near her, then moved back. The horse watched her. It took a step closer, then another. Clara didn't move. She looked at the sea, not at the horse. She waited. Soft sounds of hooves on grass, a snort, then a crunch as the horse took the apple piece. Clara smiled but didn't turn. She set another piece down, a bit closer to her. Again, the horse came, took the apple, moved away. They did this with all 4 pieces. The last one Clara held in her flat hand. The horse stood still for a long time. Then slowly it came to her. Its warm breath touched her hand. Its soft lips tickled her palm as it took the apple. "Good," Clara whispered. "Very good." The horse didn't run. It stood near her, watching her with its big eyes. She reached out her hand very slowly. It let her touch its nose, just for a second. Then it turned and walked away, not running, just walking. Clara's heart felt too big for her chest. This wild thing trusted her, just a little. But it was a start. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky red and gold, Clara helped Aunt Jo in the garden behind the house. They pulled weeds from around the carrots and beans. The dirt was cool and damp under Clara's fingers. It smelled rich and good. "Why did Mother send you away?" Clara asked. She'd wanted to ask for weeks. Aunt Jo sat back on her heels. "She didn't send me away. I chose to go." "But why? You're from a good family. You could have married well." "I didn't want to marry well. I wanted to live well." Aunt Jo pulled a big weed with a snap. "Your mother and I took different paths. She wanted safety and position. I wanted freedom and adventure. Did you find them? Freedom and adventure?" "Yes, and more. I found myself." Clara thought about this as they finished the weeds. Found herself, like something that had been lost. That night, Clara had a dream. She was on the black horse, riding fast along the beach. The wind pushed her hair back. She wasn't afraid. She was flying. The next morning, she asked Aunt Jo something she had been thinking about for days. The black horse in the field? How did it get there? Aunt Jo smiled a small smile. I bought it. You? But how? Why? After I heard what happened at the hunt, I sent a man with money to the royal stables. He said he wanted the wild horse that no one could ride. They were happy to sell it. But it must have cost so much. Some things are worth the cost. Why did you do it? Aunt Jo looked right at Clara. Because some spirits are not meant to be broken. Clara felt tears come to her eyes. She hugged her aunt tight. Thank you, she whispered. Days turned into weeks, weeks into a month. Clara read all of Aunt Jo's books, some of them twice. She helped in the house and garden. She walked the cliffs and beaches, and she visited the black horse. Each day she stayed a little longer. Each day the horse trusted her a little more. One evening Clara found a new book on her bed. It had a red cover with gold writing. The Mind of Woman was its name. What's this? She asked Aunt Jo. A new book. Just came today. It's by a woman named Mary. She says women should have the same chances as men. To learn, to work, to choose their own way. Clara sat up all night reading it. The words burned in her mind like fire. They said things she'd felt but never knew how to say. That women were not toys or prizes. That they had minds and hearts just as strong as men's. That they should be free to use them. In the morning her eyes were red from no sleep. But her mind felt wide open, like a door had been pushed wide. What did you think? Aunt Jo asked at breakfast. I think I've been asleep my whole life, and now I'm waking up. Aunt Jo smiled. Good. That day, Clara took the book to her spot on the cliff. She read parts of it again, stopping to think about each big idea. The sun was warm on her back. The sea stretched out before her like all the possibilities in the world. The black horse came to her now without fear. It let her stroke its neck. It sighed. It took apples from her hand. It had a name now. Freedom. Clara talked to Freedom while she brushed its coat. The book says we're all born free, that no one should own another person. I think the same is true for horses. No one should break your spirit. You should choose who to trust. Freedom pushed his nose against her shoulder, like he was saying yes. One day, Aunt Jo took Clara to the small town near their house. It had a tiny store, a church, and a small place where people met to talk about books. This is my friend Mrs. Bell, Aunt Jo said, introducing Clara to a woman with silver hair. She runs our little reading circle. Hello, my dear, said Mrs. Bell. Jo tells me you're quite the reader. I like books very much, Clara said. She felt shy. It was her first time talking to new people since the hunt. We're discussing the stars tonight, said Mrs. Bell. Jo says you've been reading about them. Yes, how sailors use them to find their way. Would you like to join us? We meet every Thursday, just a small group who like to learn new things. Clara looked at Aunt Jo, who nodded. I would like that very much, she said. That Thursday, Clara put on her plainest dress. She brushed her hair, but didn't pin it up in the fancy way she used to. She walked with Aunt Jo to Mrs. Bell's small house. 8 people sat in a circle, men and women together. They weren't fancy people like at home. A baker, a man who fixed boats, a woman who taught children to read. Simple people with minds hungry for ideas. This is Clara, Mrs. Bell said. She's staying with Jo. They all smiled and said hello. No one asked who her family was, or why she was there. They just made room in the circle. We were talking about how the planets move, said the boat fixer. How they go around the sun, not around us like people used to think. Clara listened as they talked. They asked what she thought. They cared about her ideas, not her family name or her pretty face. At the end, Mrs. Bell gave Clara a book to take home. For next week, she said, if you want to come back. I do, said Clara, very much. On the walk home, the stars shone bright above them. Clara looked up at them. They had always been there, but she had never really seen them before. The book says the light from stars takes years to reach us, she said. So what we see is how they were in the past, not how they are now. Yes, said Aunt Jo, just like people. What we see is often who they were, not who they are now. Clara thought about the people back home, how they saw her as the girl who fell in mud, the girl who lost a prince. But that wasn't who she was now. She was someone new. I like who I'm becoming, she said softly. Aunt Jo squeezed her hand. So do I, my dear. So do I. The small town was busy on market day. People filled the streets with their carts and goods. Farmers sold fresh food. Old women sold cloth they had made. Children ran between the stalls, laughing and playing. Clara walked with Aunt Jo through the crowd. She wore a simple blue dress and carried a basket for their shopping. After 6 months at the cottage, she felt at home here. Her skin was brown from the sun. Her hands were rough from work. She looked nothing like the fine lady she had once been. "We need flour and tea," Aunt Jo said, checking her list. And Mrs. Bell asked if we would join her for lunch at the inn. She has a guest she wants us to meet. A guest? Clara asked. She knew most people in town now. They were kind to her. They didn't care about her past. Yes, a man from Scotland who studies plants and animals. He's staying at the inn while he collects things from our beaches. Clara nodded. She liked meeting new people now. Each one had different ideas, different ways of seeing the world, not like at home, where everyone thought the same way. They bought their things, flour, tea, some fresh bread, a piece of cheese, and walked to the small inn at the edge of town. It had 10 rooms for people to stay in. The dining room was warm and smelled like good food. Mrs. Bell sat at a table by the window. Next to her was a man Clara had never seen before. He was not young, not old, maybe 35. He had brown hair and a face that looked kind. He wore simple clothes, not fancy, but clean and neat. "Joe! Clara! Come meet our guest," Mrs. Bell called. They walked to the table. The man stood up when they came. This was polite like men did at home, but his smile was real. "This is Dr. Alexander Murray," Mrs. Bell said. "He's from Edinburgh University in Scotland. He studies the plants and animals of our coasts." "Very nice to meet you," Dr. Murray said. He spoke with a different sound than English people. His voice went up and down in a nice way. "Mrs. Bell has told me about your reading group. It sounds quite interesting." "It is," Clara said. "We're reading about sea creatures now." "Are you?" His eyes lit up. "That's my special interest. What have you learned?" "That some fish can make their own light, and that whales are not fish at all, but more like us." Dr. Murray smiled wider. "Exactly right. Most people don't know that." They all sat down. The inn lady brought them soup and bread. As they ate, Dr. Murray told them about the strange plants he'd found on the beach, the tiny animals in the tide pools, the birds that came from far away. Clara asked questions, many questions. She didn't try to sound proper or pretty. She just wanted to know things. "You've read Darwin's book?" Dr. Murray asked, looking surprised. "Yes." "Aunt Jo has it in her library." "That's unusual. Most young ladies don't read such things." "I'm not most young ladies," Clara said. Then she worried it sounded rude, but Dr. Murray laughed. "I can see that," he said, "and I'm very glad." After lunch, Dr. Murray asked if they would show him the best beach for finding shells. Aunt Jo said she had to visit a sick friend, but Clara could go. "Only if you wish to," Dr. Murray said to Clara. "I do," she said. "I know a good spot." They walked down the path to the sea. Clara led the way, stepping sure on the rocky path. Dr. Murray followed, carrying his bag of tools for collecting things. "Mrs. Bell says you're from a big city," he said as they walked. "Yes, but I like it better here." "Why is that?" Clara thought about it. "In the city, everything is about how things look. Who knows who has more money or a bigger house? Here, people care about real things, the weather, the sea, ideas." Dr. Murray nodded. "I feel the same way about Edinburgh. The university there cares about learning, not just looking smart." They reached the beach. It was a small one, hidden between 2 cliffs. The sand was white. The water was clear blue. Small waves lapped at the shore. "This is perfect," Dr. Murray said, looking around. "How did you find it?" "I walk a lot. I found many hidden places." They spent the next 2 hours collecting shells and looking in tide pools. Dr. Murray knew the name of every tiny creature, every plant. He showed Clara how to use his small glass that made things look bigger. "Look at this," he said, showing her a tiny star-shaped animal. "It has 5 arms, but can grow new ones if it loses any." "Like people," Clara said. "When we lose parts of ourselves, we can grow new ones too." Dr. Murray looked at her with new eyes. "That's very wise." The sun started to go down. They sat on a rock to rest before walking back. "What brought you to this small town?" Dr. Murray asked. "If I may ask." Clara looked at the sea. Should she tell him about the prince, the mud, the laughing people? "I needed to find out who I really am," she said finally. not who other people wanted me to be. Dr. Murray was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I understand that. I was supposed to be a lawyer like my father, but I loved plants and animals more than laws." Was he angry? For a while, but then he saw how happy I was, how I was good at this work, not at being a lawyer. Clara nodded. Would her parents ever understand her choice? Would they ever see her as more than a failed princess? "We should head back," she said as the sky turned pink and gold. "It gets dark fast here." On the walk back, Dr. Murray told her about his work at the university, how he taught young men about the natural world, how he wrote books about what he found. "Would you like to see my drawings?" he asked. "I try to make pictures of the things I find to show others." "I would like that very much," Clara said. The next day, Clara met Dr. Murray at the inn. He showed her his book of drawings. They were so good. Each shell, each leaf, each tiny sea star looked real enough to touch. "These are beautiful," she said. "Thank you. It's not just about making pretty pictures, though. It's about showing the truth of each thing." It's special nature. They talked for hours about books, about stars, about faraway places he had seen and she had read about. He didn't talk down to her or try to show off. He listened to her ideas. He asked what she thought. Clara felt her mind stretch and grow, like a flower opening to the sun. This was what had been missing in her old life. Someone who saw her mind, not just her face or her family name. Over the next 2 weeks they met often, sometimes with Mrs. Bell and the reading group, sometimes just the two of them, walking on the beach or sitting in the inn's dining room with books spread out between them. Dr. Murray showed her how to draw the things they found, how to keep notes about what she saw, how to think like a scientist, looking for patterns and reasons. "You have a good mind," he told her one day, "sharp and clear. You see connections others miss." Clara felt her cheeks grow warm at his words. No one had ever praised her mind before, only her pretty face or her good manners. "Thank you," she said softly. One sunny day, they walked farther along the coast than before. They came to the field where freedom lived. The big black horse saw Clara and came running to the fence. "Hello, friend," she said, rubbing his nose. She took an apple from her pocket and gave it to him. "Is this your horse?" Dr. Murray asked, looking surprised. "Sort of. He's my friend." "He's magnificent. Wild horses are rare here." "He was caught for the royal stables, but he wouldn't let anyone ride him. They were going to break him." Dr. Murray watched as Freedom gently took another piece of apple from Clara's hand. "But you didn't break him?" "No. I just showed him I could be trusted, that I wouldn't hurt him or force him. And now he comes to you freely." Dr. Murray's voice was soft. He wasn't just talking about the horse. "That's true taming, isn't it? When someone chooses to trust you?" Clara looked up at him. His eyes were kind and deep, like he could see inside her to the person she really was. Not the perfect lady from before, not the muddy failed bride, but this new Clara, who read books and asked questions and walked on beaches with her hair flying free. "Yes," she said, "that's the only kind that matters." They stood there for a long time, watching Freedom run in his field. The sun shone on his black coat, making it gleam like polished stone. He was still wild, still free. But he had chosen to be her friend, just as she was choosing her own friends now, her own path, her own life. On the walk back, Dr. Murray told her he would be leaving soon, going back to Edinburgh and his work at the university. Clara felt her heart sink like a stone in water. She had not known how much she would miss him until this moment. "But I will be back," he said, "in the spring to continue my work here." "That's good," she said. She tried to sound normal, but her voice came out strange. "And I would be honoured if you would write to me. Share your thoughts on the books you're reading. Tell me about the things you find on your walks." "You want letters from me?" she asked. "Very much. Your mind is, well, it's like finding a rare shell on the beach. Unexpected and wonderful," Clara smiled. Not the small, proper smile from her old life, but a big, real smile that came from her heart. "I would like that," she said. "I would like that very much." Winter came to the small town by the sea. Grey clouds hung low in the sky. Wind pushed at the cottage walls. Rain fell day after day. But inside, by the fire, Clara was warm. She sat with a blanket over her legs and a letter in her hands. This was the 5th letter from Dr. Murray since he'd gone back to Scotland. His words made her smile. He wrote about the university where he taught, the students who didn't listen, the other teachers who thought his ideas were strange, and he asked about her. What was she reading? What had she found on the beach? What did she think about the stars? Clara wrote back long letters. She told him about Freedom, who now let her sit on his back while he walked around his field, about the book on maps she was reading, about the shells she found after the big storm. On this cold winter day, she read his latest letter one more time. "I miss our talks," he wrote. "No one here sees the world the way you do, with fresh eyes and a clear mind. I think of our walks on the beach every day." Clara held the letter to her heart. A warm feeling filled her chest. Was this what it felt like to be seen for who you really were? To be liked for your mind, not just your face or your family? "Another letter?" Aunt Jo asked, bringing tea to the fire. "Yes, Dr. Murray says hello to you, and he's sending a new book about seabirds. He's very thoughtful," Aunt Jo's eyes twinkled, "and he writes to you quite often." Clara felt her cheeks grow warm. "He's my friend." "Of course he is." Aunt Jo smiled into her tea. The winter days passed slowly. Clara kept busy. She helped Aunt Jo in the house. She went to the reading group every Thursday. She walked on the beach when it wasn't raining too hard, and she rode Freedom, who was now tame enough to wear a rope around his neck, no bit in his mouth, no saddle on his back, just a rope to help guide him. "You two have come a long way," Aunt Jo said one day, watching from the fence as Clara sat on Freedom's broad back. The horse walked calmly around his field. "We trust each other now," Clara said. She leaned down to pat Freedom's neck. His black coat shone in the winter sun. "Trust takes time," Aunt Jo said, "for horses and for people too." Spring came early that year. In March the days grew warmer. Little green shoots pushed up from the ground. Birds sang in the trees. The sea turned from grey to blue again, and Dr. Murray came back. Clara saw him first at the reading group. She walked into Mrs. Bell's small front room, and there he was, sitting by the fire. His face lit up when he saw her. "Miss Clara," he said, standing up, "how good to see you again." "Dr. Murray," she couldn't stop smiling. "Welcome back." They talked all night about books and ideas. The other people in the group smiled at each other. They could see something growing between these two, something more than just friendship. The next day, Dr. Murray asked if Clara would show him the tide pools again. "I need to see how they change with the seasons," he said. They walked along the cliff path. The grass was green now, with small yellow flowers dotting it like stars. The sea below was calm and blue. "I've missed this place," Dr. Murray said. "Edinburgh is all grey stone and smoke. No blue water. No wild cliffs. No wild horses," Clara added with a smile. "Speaking of which, how is your friend Freedom?" "Very well. He lets me ride him now." Dr. Murray's eyes widened. "You've tamed him." "Not tamed. Befriended. He chooses to let me ride him. If he didn't want to, he wouldn't." They reached the small hidden beach. The tide was out, showing pools of water in the rocks. Little creatures moved in them. Tiny crabs, sea stars, small fish trapped until the tide came back. Dr. Murray took out his book and pencil. He drew the pools and the creatures in them. Clara sat beside him, watching his hands move, making real things appear on the blank page. "Would you like to try?" he asked, holding out the pencil. "Oh, I can't draw." "Everyone can draw. It just takes practice." He moved behind her and put the pencil in her hand. His hand covered hers, warm and strong. "Like this," he said, guiding her hand to make lines on the paper. "Gentle strokes. Look at what you're drawing, not at the paper." Clara's heart beat fast at his touch. She tried to focus on the sea star in the pool, not on his hand over hers, but it was hard, very hard. After a while, they had a drawing. It wasn't as good as his, but it looked like a sea star, a real one. "See," he said, his voice soft in her ear. "You can do it." She turned her head to look at him. Their faces were very close. For a moment, neither of them spoke. His eyes looked into hers, deep and kind. Then he moved back a bit. I should show you something else I found," he said, his voice not quite steady. He dug in his bag and pulled out a book. "I brought this for you." It was a new book about the stars. Clara took it with both hands. "Thank you," she said. "I'll read it right away." Every day that week they met, sometimes at the inn for tea, sometimes on the beach to collect shells. Once at the old church, where they climbed the tower to look at bird nests, and every day Clara felt something growing inside her. A warm, bright feeling that made her want to laugh and cry at the same time. Was this what people meant when they talked about love? Not the cold, proper thing she was supposed to feel for the prince, but this wild, happy feeling that made her heart dance. One sunny day, they took a picnic to Freedom's field. The horse came to greet them, nuzzling Clara's hand for treats. "He really does trust you," Dr. Murray said, watching as Freedom let Clara stroke his nose. It took time and patience, and letting him make the choice. They spread a blanket on the grass and set out their food, bread and cheese, apples and tea, simple things that tasted better in the open air, with the sea spread out below them. "I've been offered a new position," Dr. Murray said as they ate, "at a bigger university with more money and a better title." Clara felt her heart sink. "Oh, that's good news. Is it?" He looked at her closely. "I'm not sure." "Why not? Sounds like what every teacher wants." "It would mean living in London, far from the sea, far from here." Clara looked down at her bread. She didn't know what to say. She didn't want him to go, but she couldn't ask him to stay. That wasn't fair. "What do you think I should do?" he asked softly. I don't know. What do you want to do?" Murray was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I want to be where I can do my best work, where I can study the things I love, where I can be with people who understand me." He reached out and took her hand. His touch was gentle, like he was holding something precious. "Clara," he said, "I've never met anyone like you, someone who sees the world the way I do, who asks questions, who thinks about things, who isn't afraid to be different." Clara's heart beat so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I feel the same way about you," she whispered. "Do you?" His eyes lit up. "Really?" She nodded. "No one ever cared about my thoughts before, just how I looked or how well I could curtsy or pour tea. You're the first person who wanted to know what was in my mind, not just on my face." He moved closer to her on the blanket. "Clara," he said, "I don't want to go to London. I want to stay here, near the sea, near you. But your work, I can work here. The university will let me stay and study the coast, write books about what I find, teach a few students who want to learn. You'd give up the better job, the money and the title? Those things don't matter. What matters is being true to yourself, doing work you love, being with people who see the real you." He took both her hands now. "Clara," he said, "I know we haven't known each other long, and I'm older than you, and I'm not rich or titled, but I care for you, very much." Clara felt tears fill her eyes, happy tears. "I care for you too," she said. Dr. Murray smiled, his whole face lighting up. "Then may I call on you properly? May I speak to your aunt about my intentions?" Clara laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Yes," she said. "Yes to all of it." He leaned forward and pressed his lips to her hand. A soft kiss, full of promise. Freedom whinnied from across the field, as if he approved. The sun shone down on them, warm and bright. The sea stretched out below, blue and endless with possibilities. Clara looked at Dr. Murray, at Alexander, as she would now call him. His kind eyes, his gentle hands that drew pictures of tiny creatures, his mind that matched with hers thought for thought. This was what love should be, she realized. Not a business deal between families, not a show of wealth and power, but this. Two people who saw each other clearly and still wanted to be together. "Shall we walk back?" he asked, helping her up from the blanket. "Yes," she said. "Let's go tell Aunt Jo. She'll be very happy." They walked hand in hand along the cliff path. Birds sang in the bushes, waves crashed on the rocks below, and in Clara's heart a new feeling grew, stronger than the old fear, brighter than the old shame. It felt like coming home after a very long journey. It felt like waking up after a deep sleep. It felt like freedom. Summer came to the small town by the sea. The days were long and warm. Flowers bloomed in every garden. Birds sang from morning till night. The water turned a deeper blue, like the sky had fallen into it. Clara stood in her small room at Aunt Jo's house, looking at herself in the mirror. She wore a simple white dress with tiny blue flowers on it. Her hair was not pinned up in a tight proper way, but fell in soft waves around her shoulders. A small crown of daisies sat on her head, made by the children in town who loved her stories about sea creatures. "Are you ready?" Aunt Jo asked, standing in the doorway. She wore her best dress, dark blue with a lace collar. Her grey hair was brushed neatly, and she had a big smile on her face. "Yes," Clara said, "I'm ready." They walked together down the cliff path to the little church in town. The path was lined with wild roses. Their sweet smell filled the air. Clara picked one as she passed and tucked it into her dress. "Are you scared?" Aunt Jo asked. Clara thought about it. Was she scared? To marry Alexander? To start a new life? To be someone different from who she was raised to be? "No," she said at last. "I'm not scared. I'm happy." Aunt Jo squeezed her hand. "Good. That's how it should be." The church was small but pretty. White stone walls, a roof that pointed to the sky, stained glass windows that made coloured spots on the floor when the sun shone through. Inside, 20 people waited. Not hundreds like there would have been at the royal wedding. Not fancy lords and ladies in jewels and fine clothes. Just friends. Real friends who knew the real Clara. Mrs. Bell was there with her silver hair and kind smile. The baker who gave Clara a sweet bun every market day. The boat fixer who taught her about the tides. The teacher who lent her books. And 10 more people from their reading group in the town. Alexander stood at the front of the church. He wore a simple black suit with a white flower in the buttonhole. His face lit up when he saw Clara, not because she looked pretty, though she did, but because he was so happy to see her. The real her. Clara walked down the short aisle. Her feet moved on their own like they knew the way. When she reached Alexander, he took her hands in his. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "So do you," she said, and they both smiled. The old priest read the wedding words. They were the same words used at royal weddings and poor people's weddings alike. But today they felt new to Clara, like she was really hearing them for the first time. To love and to honour, to care for in sickness and health, to be true to all the days of your life. Clara and Alexander both said "I will" when asked. They meant it, not like a promise made for show or for money or for a title, but a real promise from the heart. Alexander put a simple gold ring on Clara's finger. It was small and plain, not like the big jewelled ring the prince would have given her, but this one felt right. It felt true. When the priest said they were husband and wife, Alexander kissed Clara softly on the lips. It was her first kiss ever. It felt like sunshine and sea air and freedom all at once. They walked out of the church hand in hand. The small group of friends threw flower petals over them. Everyone was smiling and laughing. They had a small party at Aunt Jo's house. They ate simple food, fresh bread, cheese, fruit from the garden. They drank apple juice and 1 small cup of wine each. They sat in the garden with the sea spread out before them, blue and wide. "To Clara and Alexander," Aunt Jo said, raising her cup. "May you always be as happy as you are today." Everyone raised their cups. The sun sparkled on the glasses. Birds sang in the trees around them. It was perfect. Not perfect like a royal wedding with 1,000 guests and gold plates and fancy music, but perfect in a real way, a way that made Clara's heart full. As the sun began to set, painting the sky pink and gold, a messenger came to the house. He was from the town 5 miles away, where the big houses were, where rich people stayed in the summer. "Message for Miss Clara," he said, holding out a letter. Clara took it with a frown. Who would send her a message on her wedding day? The paper was thick and fine. The writing on the front was in a fancy hand. She opened it and read the words inside. Her face went still. "What is it?" Alexander asked, coming to her side. "It's from the prince," she said softly. "He's staying at Lord Grey's house for the summer. He's heard I live nearby. He wants me to come to his party tomorrow night." The happy sounds around them got quiet. Everyone knew about the prince, about what had happened at the hunt, about how he had laughed when Clara fell in the mud. "Will you go?" Aunt Jo asked. Clara looked at the letter again. 6 months ago she would have done anything for a letter like this. She would have been so happy that the prince remembered her, wanted to see her. But now? "I don't know," she said. That night, after their friends had gone home, Claire and Alexander sat in the garden. The stars were coming out one by one. The air was warm and smelled like roses. "Do "Do you want to go to the party?" Alexander asked. He held her hand, his thumb rubbing small circles on her skin. "No," Clara said, "but I feel like I should, to show him I'm not broken. That I'm happy now. You don't owe him anything. I know, but—" Clara looked out at the dark sea. "I want to close that door, to end that part of my life for good." Alexander nodded. He understood. "Then we'll go together." The next night they drove to Lord Grey's big house in Aunt Jo's small cart. It wasn't a fancy coach with 4 white horses like Clara would have had in her old life, but it got them there just fine. Lord Grey's house was huge, with 50 rooms and tall windows that glowed with light. 20 carriages stood outside. Music floated out into the night air. Clara wore her wedding dress again, the simple white one with small blue flowers. It wasn't a ball gown with jewels and lace, but it was pretty and clean and right for her now. Alexander held her hand as they walked up the steps. A man at the door asked their names. "Dr. and Mrs. Murray," Alexander said. It was the first time Clara had heard her new name. It made her smile. The big room inside was full of people in fancy clothes, women with big hair and shiny dresses, men in black suits with medals and pins. They all turned to look as Clara and Alexander came in. At first, no one knew who she was. She looked different now. Her hair was down. Her face was brown from the sun. Her hands were rough from work. She was not the perfect pale lady she had once been. But then someone whispered, and another, and another. Soon the whole room was whispering and staring. "It's her, the one who fell in the mud, the one who tried to tame the wild horse." Clara held her head high. She didn't run or hide. She wasn't ashamed anymore. "Clara!" The voice came from across the room, deep and cold. The prince. He walked toward her, people moving out of his way like water around a rock. He looked the same, tall and handsome in a hard way. His uniform was red and gold with more medals than before. His eyes were still cold even when he smiled. "Your Highness," Clara said, dropping into a small curtsy. Not the deep, perfect one she had been taught, just a small one, polite but not humble. "I heard you were living nearby," the prince said. "With your aunt, is it? How quaint." Clara nodded. "Yes, it's a lovely cottage by the sea. And who is this?" The prince looked at Alexander with eyes like ice. "This is my husband, Dr. Alexander Murray. We were married yesterday." The prince's face changed for just a second, surprise, maybe even a small bit of hurt. Then his mask came back. "How quick," he said. "I didn't know you were engaged." "Life is full of surprises," Clara said. The prince looked at her closely, at her simple dress, her sun-browned skin, her clear eyes that weren't afraid anymore. "You've changed," he said. "Yes," Clara agreed, "I have." "You know, I married the Countess von Stein," the prince said. "It was the biggest wedding in 10 years. 600 guests. The king himself came." "How nice," Clara said. She didn't ask if he was happy, if the Countess was kind, if they laughed together or talked about books or watched stars. She knew the answers already. The prince frowned. He wasn't used to people who didn't ask about him, who didn't try to make him happy. "Well," he said stiffly, "I wish you happiness in your small life." "Thank you," Clara said. "I wish you happiness too. Real happiness." The prince's eyes narrowed. He didn't understand what she meant. Maybe he never would. "If you'll excuse us," Alexander said, putting his hand on Clara's back. "My wife promised to dance to me." They walked away from the prince to the middle of the room where people were dancing. Alexander put his hand on Clara's waist. She put hers on his shoulder. They moved together to the music, not perfect, but in time with each other. "Are you all right?" Alexander asked softly. Clara looked back at the prince, who stood stiff and alone watching them. Then she looked at her husband, his kind eyes, his gentle hands, his mind that matched with hers. "Yes," she said, "I'm more than all right. I'm free." And as they danced in that big room, surrounded by people who had once looked down on her, Clara knew she'd made the right choice, the hard choice, the choice to be herself, not what others wanted. She had fallen in mud and lost a prince, but she had found herself, and that was worth more than all the royal weddings in the world. Snow fell softly on the streets of Edinburgh. White flakes drifted down from a grey sky, covering the old stone buildings like sugar on a cake. People hurried along the paths wrapped in warm coats and scarves, their breath making little clouds in the cold air. Inside a small warm house near the university, Clara sat by the window watching the snow fall. A fire crackled in the fireplace. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. A desk in the corner was covered with papers, drawings of plants and sea creatures, maps of faraway places. 6 months had passed since her wedding to Alexander. 6 months since they had left the small town by the sea and moved to Scotland. 6 months of building a new life together. Edinburgh was not like London, with its fancy parties and strict rules about who was important and who was not. It was a city of learning, of ideas, of people who cared about what you thought, not who your family was or how much money you had. "More tea?" Alexander asked, coming into the room with a steaming pot. "Yes, please." Clara held out her cup. "It's snowing harder now." Alexander looked out the window. "So it is. Good day to stay inside by the fire." He sat next to her on the small couch. They sipped their tea and watched the snow. It was quiet and peaceful, just the sound of the fire popping and the clock ticking on the wall. "I got a letter from Aunt Jo today," Clara said. "She says Freedom is doing well. The children in town take him apples every day." "Do you miss him?" "And the sea?" "Sometimes. But we'll go back in the spring when you do your research, and I like it here too." Clara looked around their small, cosy home. "It feels right." Alexander took her hand. His fingers were warm from the teacup. "Are you happy, Clara? Really happy?" She thought about it, about her life now, so different from what she'd once thought it would be. No big house with servants, no fancy title, no prince husband. Instead, she had this small home filled with books and interesting things. She had work she loved, helping Alexander with his research and writing her own stories about the sea for children. She had friends who liked her for herself. And she had Alexander, who saw all of her, the smart parts and the scared parts and the brave parts, and loved them all. "Yes," she said, "I am really, truly happy." The door knocked. Alexander went to open it. A young man stood there shivering in the snow. "Dr. Murray," he said, "the dean sent me. He needs you at the university right away. Something about the new specimens from Africa." "Now? In this snow?" "He said it's very important, sir." Alexander looked back at Clara. "I'm sorry. I should go see what's wrong." "Of course," she said. "Be careful in the snow." After Alexander left, Clara went back to the window. The snow was falling faster now, making the world outside look like a picture in a fairy tale book. She picked up her own work, a story about a little girl who finds a magic shell that lets her talk to fish. She had written 10 pages so far. Children in 3 schools were waiting to hear the end. Another knock at the door made her look up. Who could it be now? More university business? She opened the door to find a woman standing there. She wore a fine fur coat and hat. Her face was pale and perfect, like a doll's. Her hands were covered in soft gloves. She looked like she had stepped out of Clara's old life, the life of fancy parties and perfect manners. "Can I help you?" Clara asked. The woman's eyes were blue and cold. "Are you Mrs. Murray? The wife of Dr. Alexander Murray?" "Yes, I am." "I am the Countess von Stein." Clara's heart jumped in her chest. The prince's wife, the woman who had taken the place that was once meant for her. "Please come in," Clara said, stepping back. "It's cold out there." The countess came inside, looking around with sharp eyes that saw everything. The simple furniture, the many books, the papers on the desk. "You live simply," she said. Her voice had a slight accent like music with one wrong note. "We have what we need," Clara said. "Would you like some tea?" The countess nodded, still standing stiff and straight in her fine coat. Clara made a fresh pot, her hands shaking a little. Why was the prince's wife here? What did she want? They sat by the fire as different as 2 women could be. The countess in her rich clothes and perfect hair. Clara in her simple dress with ink stains on her fingers from writing. "You must wonder why I've come," the countess said, holding her teacup like it might break. "I am curious," Clara admitted. "My husband told me about you, about how you were to marry him, how you fell in the mud." The countess's mouth twisted a little at the words. "He talks about you often." Clara didn't know what to say. The prince talked about her. After all this time, "He is not happy," the countess said flatly. "He has everything, money, power, a big house, a wife from a good family. But he is not happy. I'm sorry to hear that, Clara said. And she was. She didn't love the prince anymore, but she didn't wish him to be sad. After we saw you at Lord Grey's house, he changed. He watches me, compares me. Clara would say this. Clara would think that. It is hard. The Countess's perfect face showed a crack of real feeling. So I wanted to see you, to see what he sees in you. Clara felt a flash of pity for this woman. She was trapped in the same golden cage that Clara had almost entered, but she had no key to unlock it. The prince and I were not right for each other, Clara said gently. We wanted different things. And what did you want? The Countess asked. To be myself. To be free to think and learn and grow. To be loved for who I am, not for who I pretend to be. The Countess looked around the small room again, at the books, the papers, the simple things. And this is enough for you? This small life? Clara smiled. It's not small. It's wide as the sea, as high as the stars. I learn something new every day. I write stories that children love. I help my husband with his work. I have friends who care about my thoughts, not just my face or my clothes. But you have no title, no fine house, no servants. I have something better, Clara said. I have freedom. The Countess was quiet for a long time. Then she stood up. I should go. My husband will wonder where I am. At the door, she turned back. He's right about one thing. You have changed. Your eyes are different now. They see things. They always did, Clara said. I just didn't know it was all right to show it. After the Countess left, Clara went back to her writing, but her mind kept going back to the strange visit, to the unhappy woman in her fine clothes, to the prince who had everything and nothing. She was still thinking about it when Alexander came home, his coat covered in snow, his cheeks red from the cold. You won't believe what happened, he said, taking off his wet things. The Dean has asked me to lead a new study, a big one, about how the animals on our coast compare to those in other parts of the world. That's wonderful, Clara said. It's what you've always wanted. There's more. Alexander took her hands. They want you to write a book to go with it, a book for children about the sea creatures we find. With your stories and my drawings. Clara's heart felt too big for her chest. A real book, with her name on it, her stories that she had worked so hard on. Did you tell them yes? She asked. I told them I would ask my brilliant wife if she would join me on this adventure. Clara threw her arms around him. Yes, she said. Yes to the book. Yes to the adventure. Yes to everything. As they hugged, Clara thought about the Countess in her fine clothes going back to her big, empty life. And she thought about herself, here in this small, warm house, with work she loved and a husband who saw her as she really was. Who was really the rich one? 6 months later, on a bright spring day, Clara stood in a bookshop in Edinburgh. A line of children and parents stretched out the door and down the street. Each waited to have Clara sign her new book, The Secret Lives of Sea Creatures. It had sold 1,000 copies in its first week. Children all over Scotland were reading it, learning about the tiny animals in tide pools and the big fish in the deep sea. Alexander stood nearby, watching with pride as his wife signed book after book. He would leave soon for his big study of the coasts. Clara would go with him. They would work together, learning and finding new things to share with the world. As the last child left with the signed book, Clara looked up to see a familiar figure in the doorway. Mother. She wore a fine dress and hat, her face still perfect and smooth, her back straight as a ruler. Clara, she said, walking forward, your father and I received your letter and a copy of your book. Hello, Mother, Clara said. I'm glad you came. The book is not what I expected. Mother's voice was stiff. I thought it would be simple stories for children, but it has real learning in it. Facts about the sea, ideas about how to take care of our world. Children are smarter than we think, Clara said. They want to learn real things. Mother nodded. She looked around the bookshop at the empty space where the line of children had been. You've done well, she said at last. In your own way. Coming from Mother, this was high praise indeed. Would you like to come to dinner? Clara asked. Meet Alexander properly, see our home? Mother hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I would like that. That night, sitting in their small dining room with Mother, Father and Aunt Jo, who had come up from Cornwall for a visit, Clara felt a circle closing, the old life and the new life touching, not fighting anymore. "A toast," Father said, raising his glass. "To my daughter and her husband. May their work bring light to the world." Everyone raised their glasses. The light from the candles made them shine like stars. Later, after their guests had gone, Clara and Alexander sat by their fire. The first copy of her book sat on the table between them, her name printed in big letters on the front, her words inside teaching children about the world and its wonders. "Did you ever think," Alexander asked, "that falling in the mud that day would lead to all this?" Clara thought about it, about the girl she had been, so afraid of doing the wrong thing, so careful to be perfect, so empty inside. "Sometimes," she said, "we have to fall before we can fly." Outside their window, the stars shone bright in the dark sky. The same stars she had once watched from a cliff by the sea. The same stars that sailors used to find their way home. Clara had found her way too. Not to a castle or a prince or a life of fancy parties and perfect manners, but to this, a life of learning and growing, of being true to herself, of loving and being loved for who she really was. It wasn't the life she'd been raised for. It wasn't the life her parents had planned. But it was a life that fit her, like a key fits a lock, like a hand fits another hand, like a heart finds its home, and that made all the difference in the world.